So last year, I was here, I talked about our in-housing journey of paid digital media. And this year, what I'm talking about is how that actually led to us in-housing measurement and making a case for increased media spend, specifically around brand. And so, quick recap on why we brought things in-house. Nothing screams lazy like screenshots of slides on a slide, so you're welcome. So yeah, why did we want to in-house digital media? We were digitally immature. It was affecting our marketing's bottom line. So we wanted to in-house it for transparency and performance. It was not a cost-cutting exercise. It was really to drive performance. So we defined our scope, our transition plan from our AOR. We created a business case, which was very financially driven, got that approved, and then we hit the ground running. So 2023, we were hiring a lot of people, building this new program, taking over all the activation and planning and buying and everything. We definitely did not reinvent the wheel. We had a lot of operational tasks to do, right? Getting platform seats, documenting, our company's huge on documenting everything, so documenting playbooks and best practices, new processes. From a tactical standpoint, again, didn't reinvent the wheel. We did just kind of attack the low-hanging fruit. And it was chaotic, right? Doing this across, 12 markets across the globe all at once. Building the plane while flying it is that silly little animation there. But how did we do? Pretty damn good. Especially considering the chaos of doing this globally all at once. So we look at success in two ways in this case, right? How did we do against our previous agency benchmarks, but then also how did we do against ourselves year over year? I'm not gonna read all the numbers, but we did well. Certainly not all sunshine and rainbows. We have plenty more that we can do better and innovate on, but overall, definitely on the right track. So taking it back a step, right, to that business case approval, we realized, very quickly that measurement was really important. Where business case gets approved, we get the funding, we're excited, we're happy, then comes the fine print. Oh crap, we actually have to report on the bottom line earnings that we're driving and attributing for this business case to our executive leadership on a quarterly basis. And this is, again, across 12 markets, very immature in terms of measurement, doing it differently where we do have it in place. So we've really had to figure that out simultaneously in addition to also in-housing all of the media. We had to figure out how we were actually going to do this. But that ended up kind of being a blessing in disguise because there was now this sense of urgency around figuring out measurement for the business case. But then with the success of the in-house media team, that really underscored now the value of not just showing the business case success, but now marketing more holistically. So now we've invested in actually a small but mighty measurement team to show marketing measurement more holistically, not just for the business case. I know everyone's talked about their own funnel. This is our version. This is more of a takeaway to just really say this is how we started to define the remit for the measurement team of what we were actually going to consider like in scope for us to measure off the bat, have to put a stake in the ground. And so we really just put our scope in place around what we could control. So something like NPS, which is owned by a different team, isn't in our measurement, kind of holistic measurement approach today, but kind of on a roadmap to start collaborating with teams like that. So once we got our kind of remit in place, this is just kind of our view on holistic measurement, right? How are we actually measuring across creative, media, and brand? So creative impact analysis, things like pre-testing, in-market ad tracking, then we've got MMM and MTA in place for businesses where it makes sense, dedicated media analytics function to ensure ongoing regular optimizations to campaigns in flight, actually establishing a test and learn budget rather than people just throwing that buzzword around. We tested this, we tested that, and then doing investing in a new global brand health tracker for the first time. So as we move on, we obviously needed to mature, but we did start pretty simple, right? The in-house media team is there, so we really just had this new level of transparency. And what we call Fisher pricing it, where we're talking to our executives that aren't necessarily know all the marketing jargon and things like that. So we always every presentation, every time we talked, right, it was like, all right, let's Fisher Price this. So that's how we started, with just kind of the new level of transparency that we had into the data, now that we actually had an in-house team and a centralized location for it all. We started looking at simple ratios, right? And we noticed that they were wildly out of whack, right? We're barely spending on brand, we're spending a ton on tactical product. We're spending way too much money on creative when we're not spending nearly enough on media. And we had an absurd number of small campaigns, talking like 30K, 50K, as opposed to actually aggregating that into a more impactful, larger campaign. And so the in-house team actually was able to shed light on these things. And then this also led to, again, thinking about how we were going to measure the success of the in-house team and actually report back on those bottom line earnings. We worked with finance, which in our company, it's a very actuarial-driven company. So getting a finance-approved attribution methodology for the first time ever was huge, added a lot of credibility. Again, very simple, because as you're talking to these finance experts for the first time about marketing and attribution, right, it's just last click, and then we worked with finance to add kind of a value to what that lead was in terms of bottom line earnings. Obviously, you can't stop there, because that clearly doesn't show the full value of marketing. So now we're Fisher pricing it with media mix modeling and kind of rolling that out internally for the first time in many years. So we're really focusing on media mix modeling as kind of our source of truth now for showing the holistic impact of marketing. And so not just the business case, not just last click leads and earnings, but actually showing the full value. We look at it in these 4 kind of different buckets. So kind of just the overall ROI summary, the channel performance, the spend optimizer and scenario planner, and then saturation curves, which we're going to get into each one of these. So here's just an example of the first one, right, looking at MROI overall. So kind of looking at the trends over time, understanding the value of marketing and our impact, and then, again, this high level just allows us to see, did we introduce a new channel? How did that impact ROI? Something like that. Then we just take it to the next level down, what at a channel specific level, what are we doing? So how are we trending over time? Easy example for like direct buy, we do a lot of direct buys. Did we introduce a new partner? Did we remove an old partner? And so how did that affect ROI? Things like that, or even with other channels, did we try a new ad format or something like that? So we're using that, both of those in planning phase and in flight to actually optimize the campaigns. This is just really showing like what does that output actually look like in terms of optimization recommendations for in flight. So what's your current allocation? What's the optimal allocation to drive ROI? So not rocket science. What goes into that is pretty smart from the advanced analytics team, but output is nice and easy. The other way we're using it right now too is the halo impact, right? So we know different lines of business have an impact. Their campaign spend has an impact on other lines of business. And so we're using this to force kind of those business unit level CMOs to actually maybe coordinate campaigns. Crazy idea, right? So that they can actually piggyback off of each other, help each other, things like that. And then, if one's out of market, another one might be in market, kind of making sure the flighting strategy is considered as well. And then this also helps us when we think about those direct buy partners and things like that, where we have audience overlap, what types of partners can we work with to kind of get the most bang for our buck across multiple businesses. So that's media mix modeling was one thing, right? We also now have invested again in our first global brand health tracking. So, awareness, brand attributes, all that fun stuff. We kind of were doing that country by country. So this is the first time we're actually looking at it holistically by a single vendor and partner. And so, I'm sure everyone understands the benefits of the brand health tracker, but what it helped us also realize too was, our measuring creative performance. So it really underscored the importance of doing creative pre-testing, not just, a onesie, twosie focus group, but actually doing a little bit more rigor behind that and having the proper checks, balances in place so that we could ensure, creative is resonating and media is performing well, and so that they're working well together. And we're not kind of pointing fingers at each other or anything like that. And so based on these results, it actually led to us, finding our, white space and figuring out what we were going to do for the first time ever as a global brand strategy, which just launched in 3 key markets in Asia, and we'll be rolling out in the rest of the world over the coming 6 months. But so investing in this has also led to a new global brand strategy for us. Part of the new brand health tracker obviously gave us new insights into competitors and competition. And so with that came even more questions around competitors and competition. And so we reinvested for the first time in probably 5 or 6 years in just media, paid media share of voice data. Again, this one like literally is not rocket science, right? Like we're just using it to look at what are our competitors spending, like are we even in the same ballpark? You can see we're not. What channels are they in, so that maybe we want to test into new channels. And then flighting strategy, right? Like, is it even worth spending in wherever those giant spikes are by our competition, since we're going to be so drowned out, maybe we just turn off or just stay on and search or something like that. So that's where we are kind of today. And so we're putting all this together right now to kind of tell the story of why we need to invest more in media, specifically brand media. And so using those same tools that we've now built over the last 6 to 12 months, here's one specifically again for media mix modeling. We call these our saturation curves, which is just a fancy way of looking at diminishing returns. So we actually look at it at a channel level to show that we should be increasing our spends at a channel level in order to maximize our ROI. And so this is a really great, easy visual way to show that we're underspending in certain channels. And then we're also using it, the spend optimizer and scenario planner, then to show overall our spend is also not even, not hitting diminishing returns. We can run these different scenarios now to say, if you give me X dollars, we'll get you Y dollars in return, and showing that the MRI is actually continuing to grow because, again, we're underspending so much that we're not even close to the diminishing returns level. So that's one piece, right? Media mix modeling uses your own historical data. What if you want to test into a new channel, right? Like how do you even start to think about forecasting that, right? If you haven't spent there before or whatever, right? So there's other ways that we have to look too about making the case for increased spend. So this is one pretty simple view that we use, right? Just the correlation between our brand equity and our paid media share of voice. And so right here, right, I think the easiest way that I can talk through this one is kind of like a couple examples, right? So in Canada, Manulife is the #2 strong brand according to our brand health tracker, but we're outspent 5.5x by the #1 brand. Is it worth increasing just our Canada spend tens of millions of dollars just to move up to the #1 spot? Probably not. Is it worth it to kind of maybe increase a little bit more to maintain that #2 spot? Certainly. But then there's our markets down in the lower left-hand corner, right? That number 10, right? We're the we're the 10th highest brand equity score in a very key strategic growth market for us. So that's clearly a market that we should invest more in order to gain some brand equity. And we know specifically that this is brand spend we want to invest in, because when we think back to the Canada example, if we only look at line of business kind of specific spend, we are actually outspending the #1 brand. But as soon as you look at parent brand spend inclusive, like that's where we get blown away and they're outspending us 5.5x. So we know we need to increase our brand spend. So far I've only talked about what we use because it's our data, right? Our brand health tracker, our media mix modeling, our share of voice data. We also do include, industry research if it's compelling. And so this is looking at what's called extra share of voice. So it's looking at our media share of voice versus our market share. And it's just really showing a simple correlation between brands essentially that are spending above their market share level tend to increase their brand awareness, increase their brand equity, and therefore their long-term value, and end up increasing their market share. And so similarly, this is just another view of showing that. But in this case, it's actually showing that your extra share of voice is more important than your absolute spend. So it's kind of putting it on a relative scale. And so it's really, again, just showing that your extra share of voice is highly correlated with driving mental availability, or upper funnel metrics that ultimately will lead to long-term growth. And so that's where we are today. We're kind of using all of this information to triangulate the parent brand spend that we're going to ask for, which is another business case that I get to make. Can't wait. But so for us, I mean, these were kind of just the three simple takeaways, right? Is like change management is an absolute beast at a large organization across the globe. So don't underestimate it. Get a project manager, create a communication plan, create an education and training program, because it's very difficult if you kind of just wing it, which I've learned the hard way now. Be realistic, right? The graph with the our share of voice versus our brand equity. Like again, you based on your organization, right? You might be able to go in tomorrow, ask for 50x more in media spend and get it. I know I wouldn't be able to do that at my organization, so it's kind of the baby steps of showing like, okay, we want maybe 2x, 3x, 5x more spend, show the value now with media mix modeling in place, and then continue to kind of ask for incremental budgets. And then art and science, right? I think, I forget, somebody mentioned art and science before too, right? I mean, it's all numbers and things like that, but there's obviously an art to it, right? Whether it's the art of storytelling and making that compelling case, or the art of adding your own subject matter expertise to the media mix modeling results, saying like why the model doesn't have the full context and we should actually be doing X, Y, and Z. Art and science together is really the best way to go. So that's it.
Thank you, Chris. That was awesome. All right, have any questions for Chris?
Hello, Evan from Horizon Media. Based off of all of the success you saw bringing that media in-house and all the learnings you had, what value do you find still within agencies, and what do you use them for still?
Yeah, so we in-house just the paid digital portion, so we still work very closely with our AOR on creative and traditional. So our traditional mix tends to have a higher percentage over in our Asia countries. We still do a lot of out-of-home there, but then in Canada we do DRTV and things like that too. So working with them on kind of integrated planning and kind of those pieces, or anything else that's not really in our remit. Like we don't have expertise in influencers, right? And one of our businesses just came to us asking for help there, and we're like, sorry, let's go talk to Dentsu. So things like that too. We're not experts in everything single area, so we still pick their brains on things like that.
I think I saw someone over here. Did I? Anyone else have a question? I actually, before I let you go,
Worry, you don't even have a question? I do.
It's my turn now. No, I'm curious in terms of, I know you gave your key takeaways, but when you look back now, is there anything you might have done differently that, when you were making this shift?
Yeah, the change management piece. We were kind of, because there was so much work to be done, I think we really neglected, like all those great stats, we only just communicated kind of relatively recently. So throughout, just having that communication plan on updating the executives, I mean, even our own CMO, like we should have done a much better job communicating the ongoing wins. Because otherwise, like, it's great that you're doing, but then you're not actually elevating it to the people that matter, that are funding it and keeping us employed. So the change management piece, I think absolutely, and as we're going through kind of the measurement piece now, like we've been utilizing our learnings from the media in-housing and actually like applying it to the measurement now of regular trainings and ongoing conversations with our business partners as a result, and that's going much more smoothly this time.
Well, that's good to hear. Okay. Well, Chris, again, thank you.
There's one more right down there. If it's quick, we can do one more down right. If we can, yes. By the way, that was Corey's question, Lisa, just so you know. So there you go. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You stole it. He was thinking the same thing.
So I have two questions.
Wait, who are you and where are you from?
I'll try to make it fast. Sorry. Jenny Kim from OMD. So two questions. First question is, how long did it take you to do this and in-house? Yeah. So I'll let you.
So in-housing the media portion took, the better part of 10 months of 2023, I'd say, to actually get to a point where we had everybody that's currently on the team hired. But we did take over all media as of 1/1/23 with whatever people we had at that point in time, and capacity and people getting burnt out and not loving their job was an issue. We have solved capacity issues at this point. And then the measurement piece, it was something that we have 13 media mix models now. We had, I'd say, like 3 or 4 initially, and so that has been built out over the past 6 to 9 months, roughly, to build the measurement piece out to where it is today.
Well, and Jenny will find you after for her second portion of the question. Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you.